Welcome back to the Motte and Bailey Basement Bar. Hey, welcome me back to the Motte and Bailey Basement Bar. This is Straight to the Chase on the Fantasy Baseball Advice Network, and today we conclude our trip around the infield finally as we're talking about the top 12 shortstops to draft for the 2025 fantasy baseball season. Now, thanks for being here, everybody. As I said, welcome me back to the Motte and Bailey here after a week in relatively sunny California with my family. We went to Disneyland, had a great time. My boys now at the ages of 5 and 7 can say they've been in both the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. That's something that I couldn't say until last week at the fat old age of 46. So, hopefully someday they appreciate all of that. We were on the road, so we're breaking out the road jersey here on Straight to the Chase. Had to go with the powder blues for the road kit, right? That was a no-brainer. I am, after all, a child of the late 70s, early 80s. And so the powder blue, FBAN jersey today here, the road kit, I felt like that was a no-brainer. Had to go with that. But regardless, we are back, and opening day approacheth at speed, everyone. We've already had regular season games in the form of the Japan series, and winter is firmly in the rear view. Now, last time out, we talked about third base, and it was maybe a little bit more optimistic top to bottom than the other two base spots had been. I mean, there's a different caliber of athlete in a lot of ways at third base, and you really could say that's maybe even more true at shortstop. I mean, we're talking some of the biggest and brightest stars in the game, multi-category chops, right? You want power? We can find you some power at the 6, right? You want speed? There is speed to burn, literally. We got guys hitting high in good lineups. It should be multiple 100-plus run scorers, 30-plus home run potential, 40-plus steal potential. There's 280 hitters all over the place. In fact, there are a full 5 shortstops going in the first round of fantasy drafts. But we're going to count them all down, and by the time we're done, you're going to know everything you need to snag yourself a starter at perhaps the game's premier position. So let us grab a refreshment, tap into that bad boy, and let us get straight to the chase, right? All right. Now, at number 12 is a guy for whom I had the pleasure of cheering for the past 4 seasons. But he was one of the biggest names in Major League Baseball free agency this offseason. It's last year's number 5 scoring shortstop in points leagues, Willy Adames of the now San Francisco Giants. Now, the scoring gap between Adames and the number 6 highest scoring shortstop last season, Ezequiel Tovar, it was a pretty substantial break. It was a definite tier break between the two. But that was mostly due to the fact that Adames had a career year by just about every measure in 2024, okay? Now, Adames had been a useful fantasy piece while with Tampa Bay, but coming to Milwaukee kind of sort of unlocked him as a player to the point where the past 3 seasons, he's been the number 6, the number 10, and then, as we said, now the number 5 scoring shortstop in fantasy. In 2024, career highs in home runs, in RBIs, in stolen bases, in walks, in hits, and if in fantasy points too, which is good for us, right? And all that was great for Milwaukee. And it was even better for him because he was in a free agent year and he was able to turn that into a shiny new contract with the San Francisco Giants. In fact, he was one of the marquee signings of the hot stove this season. So why then do we have him just 12th on our rankings? Well, it's mostly the new stomping grounds, honestly. Adames is going from American Family Miller Park Field to Oracle Park. And for a player whose fantasy value relies to a large extent on his power numbers, I mean, Willie really couldn't be making a much worse move if you check the park factors. Milwaukee plays as a hitter's haven. It always has. Whereas Oracle Park, kind of where deep flies go to die, right? I just told you, Adames had career highs just about across the board in the categories last season. So I wonder, can we really count on a second straight such season from him in a park that promises to, if anything, suppress those career high power numbers? I watched Willy Adames for 4 years. Okay. He's a good major league player. He's a team leader. He's a lineup catalyst when he's on. He's going to be just fine in the grand scheme of things. I just think that, fantasy wise, we need to temper expectations a bit as he transitions to a new home on the Bay here after 4 years on the Lake Michigan, for those of you unfamiliar with the geography of Wisconsin. Now, it also remains to be seen, in my opinion, how this Giants lineup is going to play around him. This isn't the 1927 Yankees here necessarily. He's not a big average guy. He's not a big on base percentage guy. Never really has been. And and I think he's going to be hard pressed to hit 30 home runs in San Francisco. His stolen base numbers are also likely going to take a hit. I mean, you got to remember, Milwaukee's one of the most aggressive base running teams in the league. And the Giants, if you look at, at least in terms of raw numbers, they're one of the most conservative teams, or at least have been one of the most conservative base running teams in the league. So you combine that with the lineup questions, and that likely limits both his runs scored and his RBI opportunities. Last season was his first year with over 100 RBIs. So I think that total tops out more around 90, like I said, this season. And I think that's being generous. I have nothing but love for Adames after 4 years in Milwaukee. I'm glad he got a deal. Get that bank and run with it, friend. I have nothing against that. But I'm just not going to bank myself on a second straight career year in a park that really doesn't lend itself to his offensive game, especially in light of his 6th round price tag. There's guys at the position that I think will serve you better later on in the draft. And there's guys at other positions that I vastly prefer where he's going. So love you, Willie, but draft him at your own risk. Okay. So then at number 11 on our countdown is a guy who the public feels needs a bounce back season in a big way. And it's Bo Bichette of the Toronto Blue Jays. Now, to be kind, Bichette had a rough 2024. Okay. Injuries limited him to only 81 games last season. And even in that half season's worth of work, he didn't really perform all that well. His batting average, his on base percentage, his slugging were all way down below his career averages. They were all the worst of his career in every case, in all three of those categories there. And that's got some people worried about his prospects for this season. Now, historically, he's been a very good hitter. But he still has a 290 career batting average even after last season's disaster. So I think there is a bounce back to be had here. Looking at his 2024, I mean, he missed half of it due to injury, first and foremost, which ended any chance of him improving on, that his early season performance wasn't all that bad. But when you miss half the year because you're hurt, how can you get back on the horse, so to speak, right? So that's the first thing. Second, if you look inside his numbers, yeah, the results were bad, but they were about worst case scenario you could imagine, right? His batting average on balls in play, BABIP, was just 269, and that's a full 70 points below what his previous career low had been. That's crazy. All right. So then you look at that, and that resulted in an expected batting average of 255. Okay. Now it's not great. 255 is not great, but it's still 30 points better than what his actual batting average ended up being at 225. Right. So, I mean, he got really unlucky for one. His chase rate was worse than it had been his previous 2 seasons, but it still was right there in line with his career average. He made less contact on swings outside of the zone than he ever had before. He traditionally had been a much better bad ball hitter than what he was last season. Now, his exit velocity and his barrel rates, they were down. But honestly, at the end of the day, I'm kind of willing to give a career 290 hitter the benefit of the doubt that last year was an anomaly rather than the new rule, right? He's proven by now that he's a good hitter. Don't take a 1 year blip on the radar as the new gospel. Okay. And if you've been paying attention, Bichette's had a very strong spring so far. He's hitting right around like 350 something. He's slugging almost 600. Now he's going at like around pick 118. He's going like in the 10th round, and he's going as shortstop 12. Remember, just 3 seasons ago, he was shortstop 3 overall in points. And now he's either going to be hitting in front of Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Anthony Santander, or he's going to be hitting behind him. Either way, I love him as a value play at short or in your middle infield spot. Okay. Bank on the Bo Bichette bounce back, boys and babes. Bank on it. So then cracking the top 10 of our list at number 10 is Washington Nationals shortstop CJ Abrams. Last season's number 8 shortstop in points leagues. And he looked for a while like he might be an even bigger asset. He sort of had an every other month kind of season last year where he was effective in April and June, kind of scuffled in May and July. It was like, oh, good, and good, good. And then he struggled in August, and he dealt with a shoulder injury. And then kind of the wheels came off because he's apparently a bit of a party boy at the young age of 24. And he was sent down to the minors in September for essentially what amounts to disciplinary purposes, right? So that was kind of a sour note to end the year on. But he has a nice blend of power and speed. In 2023, Abrams finished 5th in the league in steals. He took a slight step back in that regard last season, but he seems to be growing into his power. If you look at things, his exit velocity, his launch angles, his hard hit rates, they've all grown each of the last 3 seasons in the majors, even as his batting average has remained remarkably consistent. I mean, like 246, 245, 246, like his batting average has stayed the same no matter what he's done. But his power is growing. So if Abrams can stay healthy and if he can stay out of the flipping casinos, there's legitimate 25 home run. I'm not going to push it to 30 yet, but 25 home run, 40 stolen base potential here, right? And he's hitting at the top of a lineup that added Nathaniel Lowe, added Josh Bell. That should help his runs scored numbers a little bit. He's not going to give you much for RBIs, even for a leadoff hitter, right? I mean, it's still Washington. And while I said he's been remarkably consistent with his batting average, being consistently at 246 isn't lighting up the scene or lighting up your scoreboard, really. He did pull the ball a lot more last season. So, I mean, you remember those power numbers I mentioned to you, but, the two kind of go hand in hand. But so far this spring, his spray chart has actually kind of balanced out to where he looks like he's using the field more. Now, I'm not going to put too much into, 45, 50 spring plate appearances, but using the field more could help that kind of a guy with his speed profile, could get him on base more as a leadoff, which is going to lead to a better batting average, which is going to lead to more steal opportunities, which is going to lead to more runs scored. There's enough here that I really do think that CJ Abrams is worth a look. Although I'm going to be honest, I'm not crazy about a fifth round ADP. But our number 9 shortstop for 2025 finished as the number 9 scoring option at the position in points leagues last year. But he's going to be making a positional switch to center field this season. I'm talking, of course, about the Pittsburgh Pirates' O'Neal Cruz. Now, until last season, Cruz had been mostly like hype with very little return for fantasy managers and for Pirates fans alike, really. Had a broken leg, cost him basically all of 2023. That didn't help things, obviously. But last year, he was healthy, and he actually returned decent value for his ADP. He was taken as the 10th shortstop overall, and as I said, he finished 9th in scoring. So, I mean, it's a wash. But the thing is, I liked him a lot better at that 6th round value than I do in the mid 4th, which is where you're going to have to be taking him if you want some cruise control on the roster this year, right? The problems with O'Neal, are twofold. For one, dude strikes out a lot. I mean, like a lot. Like basically 1 out of every 3 at bats, a lot. You guys know by now my thoughts on batters with high K rates. And with O'Neal Cruz, he doesn't carry a high enough walk rate or high enough batting average to really offset that. Okay. And his power numbers, to me, just overall, it doesn't justify that ADP of 42 overall. That's rich. That is rich for my tastes. The second problem with Cruz is he's hitting third, which is awesome, when he's hitting third for the Pirates. Okay, he's relying on Pittsburgh Pirates founding member Andrew McCutchen, been around since the late 19th century, and the current, but for how long, Pirate Brian Reynolds in front of him. And he's tentatively being protected by, perennial breakout hopeful sixth-year veteran Joey Bart. He of the career 235 average and 32% K rate himself. So, all in all, there's enough here for me to rank Cruz as a starting shortstop, and the eventual dual positional eligibility is going to be nice. But do I think he's the 42nd best player available in drafts? He was 47th in scoring among hitters last season. So that's not a crazy disparity, but I'm not a pitching early guy in drafts, but there are at least a few pitchers I think warrant drafting ahead of him as well. Let's just say Oneil Cruz is not a target of mine right now at his current price. Starting shortstop in the league, yes. Target of mine right now, no. But our next shortstop might surprise you a bit. I'm a little out on an island here, but I call me crazy. I don't think rating a guy who's been a top 12 option at the position for 2 straight years at number 8, I don't think that's all that hot to take. Okay. We're talking about Ezequiel Tovar of the Colorado Rockies. Oh, there you go, bro. Hey. All right. No, listen, I just ragged on Oneil Cruz for being a strikeout king. And Tovar is honestly not far behind him for that, unfortunately. Now, for his short career, Tovar strikes out at almost a 28% clip. And so far this spring, he's been right in line with that at about 27%. But he is walking at a higher, almost normal pace, which is nice. So perhaps he's learning a bit of restraint at the plate, which would be a welcome change to his profile. Dude hit 269 last season, and his on-base percentage was, listen again, he hit 269, and his on-base percentage was still only 295. Getting on base more, walking, hitting, however, getting on base is going to really help his run totals. And his run totals are going to need all the help they can get in Colorado's lineup. Okay. Last season, Tovar was second in the entire league in at-bats. Second in the entire league. He had a whopping 655 at-bats. Now, he's likely batting third for them this season. So it may be hard for him to repeat that kind of performance. He's just not going to have as many, tries at the dish. Although, not walking a ton is honestly part of the reason for having so many of his plate appearances qualify as statistical at bats, right? If he had 30 more walks, which would not be a crazy stat, for the season, 30 more walks means he's got 625 at bats, which is a little more in line with the rest of the league. The not walking and the at bats kind of go hand in hand. But either way, you're really hoping that this spring's walk rate of 9.6% is a lot closer to what you get than his career 3.7 average. He's walking 2.5 times more than he normally does. Again, it's spring. Take it with a grain of salt or a whole shaker, however you feel like doing it. But the strikeouts suck. You guys know my feelings there, again. But he did that last season too. And he still finished 6th in the position at scoring. Okay. His launch angles and thus his fly ball rates increased from 2023 to 2024. And that's not a bad thing for anybody that's playing at Coors Field, right? There's 30 home run potential here. If he can maintain that launch angle, if he can increase his relatively modest 88 mile per hour exit velocity, he's got Brenton Doyle and Thairo Estrada when Thairo Estrada is healthy again, but they're going to be in front of him. And that should mean he's going to have enough ducks on the pond to improve on his RBI totals, I think. I'm admittedly a little more bullish on him maybe than some of the projections that I've seen. I think there's enough here for 80 runs, 80 ribbies, 30 home runs. If he can maintain that walk rate that he's shown this spring, and if he can cut down on the strikeouts even just a little bit, there's a 270, 275 bat here. So then all of a sudden, you got more like a 3 or 3.5 category player as opposed to just a home run Band-Aid for the lineup, right? We're talking hypotheticals here. And I know we don't necessarily want to draft guys at their ceiling, but he's a 12th round pick. I mean, you could pick up 8 or 9 starters at other positions, 2 or 3 starting pitchers. You could be the last guy to fill your shortstop position realistically, and you can still be grabbing a top 10 shortstop. So when everyone else is spending their first or their second rounder on the position, you're taking advantage of that. You're going to grab top guys at other positions. 12th round pick. He is worth it. Ezequiel Tovar, number 8. Now at number 7 is a guy who's a regular top 5 option when he's healthy, but stop me if you've heard this one, chasers. Therein lies the rub, right? Corey Seager has a monster bat when he's healthy, but he's missed 82 games in the past 2 seasons alone. Now that hurts. No pun intended, I guess. But what if I told you that in just 119 games in 2023, 2 years ago, 119 games, Seager still finished as the shortstop 4 overall in scoring. And he led all shortstops in home runs and batting average, finished second in RBIs. He was top 5 in runs, and he did all of that while playing on average over 33 fewer games than the other players in the top 10 at the position that year. Monster bat when he's healthy. Last year, he still was scoring at a top 7 or so rate on a points per game basis, while again struggling with injuries and multiple injuries actually early on. And then he had to shut down early with a sports hernia that required surgery. Now, I could go into a bunch of advanced stats. I could tell you things like over the last 2 seasons, his average exit velocities, his launch angles, his barrel rates, and his fly ball rates all mark the best 2-year stretches of his career. I could tell you that his approach is still effective. His walk to K ratio has been remarkably consistent since landing with the Rangers. And actually, they've been over his career averages, so better than his career average since he's been in Texas. But all that takes a backseat to his health. All takes a backseat to his health. Since becoming a full-time starter in 2016, Seager's been a locked-in top 12 option if he plays over 83% of his team's games. We can't just put a number on that. That's only 135 games, but I can't say that because we got the 2020 COVID year in there. So, but if he plays 83% of his team's games, locked-in top 12 option. If he plays 86% of his team's games, he's been a top 5 player. That's just 139 games over a full season. That gives you 23 days of rest, dude. Now, last season, 102 position players played at least 140 games. If we can get that from Seager, that 4th round price tag could end up being one of the steals of your draft. Okay. Now, speaking of steals, you're going to have to look elsewhere for those in category leagues if you take him, but that's a category that should be easy enough to target, in your, say your middle infield spot later on. There's a lot of speed in the middle infield or in your outfield. So I'm not worried about that, but that 4th round price tag could look really nice with just 140 games from him. So we've reached the halfway mark in our countdown. So first off, hey, a toast to all of you watching on YouTube or listening to the podcast. See if I can get this one down without choking on it. Now, I want to remind you that, we're going to be here all season. So please hit like, hit subscribe, make sure you're getting notifications so that whenever we drop new content here, we can continue to get you ready for fantasy baseball season right now. And you can chase greatness all season long and you can dominate your league mates. You can find past episodes of Straight to the Chase wherever you get your podcasts. So be sure to download us on your favorite podcast app. And hey, you got something to say? Hit us up in the comments here on the YouTube, or even better, get over to fantasybaseballadvice.com. Like it says down there, you'll find all my baseball content over there, podcasts, articles. You can sign up for a membership and have access to our fantasy sports only social media platform, where you can friend me on there and you can ask me questions on fantasy baseball, fantasy football, or even WNBA fantasy if you like. You can curate your feed, follow only the sports you care about, but you will be able to interact with other fantasy sports enthusiasts and fantasy content creators. You can download the app and always be connected on the go. Again, that's fantasybaseballadvice.com, just like it says in the ticker down there below me for your viewing pleasure. So now we move to the top 6 in our rankings, and we get to an old friend in fantasy shortstop rankings. It's Trea Turner of the Philadelphia Phillies. Now, Turner's fantasy managers were likely disappointed with what they were able to get from him last season. They spent a second rounder to take him as the third shortstop off the board. And Turner would then go on to, unfortunately, miss 38 games from May to July with a hamstring injury. He would only play in 121 games. That's his fewest since 2017. But even missing all of that time, he would finish 13th overall in scoring at shortstop, and he'd rank in the top 10 at the position in home runs, runs, and hits. And he ranked second among qualified players in batting average. So points per game wise, again, another guy was scoring at a top 7 pace. So it's not like he wasn't producing. He wasn't producing at the second round level that managers were hoping for. Now, missing games hasn't been an issue for Turner in his career, outside of a couple of major injuries he's had, like last season's hamstring, had a broken wrist in 2017, had a broken finger in 2019. But outside of the major injuries and freak injuries that happen, you get hit by a pitch, you get hit by a pitch. But outside of that, he's generally been good for over 148 games a season. And he played 59 out of 60 games in the COVID year. So even though he's going to turn 32 midway through this season, I'm not really worried about a repeat of last season. What I am a bit worried about is that his power metrics, his exit velocities, his launch angle, his barrel rates, his hard hit rates, they all declined precipitously in 2024, right? Now, further, after not having been caught stealing in 30 attempts in 2023, he was caught 4 times in 23 attempts last season, okay? He kind of looks like a player whose age is starting to show. Now, outside of last season, he's been a top 12 overall option at shortstop every season since 2017. And I just told you he was scoring at a top 7 pace last season when he was healthy. So I think even an aging Trea Turner is a top 6 fantasy shortstop for at least another season or two. Cool thing about it is that the Phillies have even said they're planning on using him in leadoff in place of Kyle Schwarber, which would probably be a good thing, not just for Turner's counting stats and for our fantasy lineups, but for the Philly lineup itself, right? If he hits leadoff, and if he gets that walk rate back up over to about 7.5, kind of like it was when he was in his Washington heyday, and 7.5 is not anything to write home about, but it's better than what he's been doing. If he can get it up there, he has a legitimate shot to be a top 5 shortstop in every category except maybe home runs. And the thing about him is he's still going to hit enough dingers that he's not going to be like a drag on your lineup in that category. You're going to have to spend a top 25 pick to get him. Okay. Meaning you're going to have to spend your second rounder. That's where he's going this year. And that feels a little rich to me at first glance. But when you consider that the top 5 shortstops are all costing a current first round pick, essentially, it's not egregious to have to take him there. I just think I'd rather grab a top 2 option at another position while everyone else is worrying about, what basically amounts to like a positional run on shortstops early. We talk about in fantasy football, not buying on the run, not falling for the run, grab value elsewhere. Same kind of thing kind of applies here for me, for my taste. Now, for those of you in Dynasty, honestly, I'm going to say, see if you can sell somebody on that Trea Turner name value and sell them furthermore on the excitement of the leadoff thing. See if you can get a haul for him here, right? Better a year early than a year late. Okay. That's just kind of where I stand with Trea Turner right now. Still like him for another year or two, but if you're in Dynasty, you don't want to wait for a year or two and then be left hanging on to an aging guy with no real value anymore. So now we've reached our top 5 shortstops, which means, like I said, we're jumping way up in ADP. In fact, Each of the last 5 names that we're going to talk about, like I said, is going to cost you a first-round pick in a 12-team league or larger. There's that much talent concentrated here at the position, okay? So we're going to start our cavalcade of superstars on the East Coast with our number 5 shortstop, the New York Mets, Francisco Lindor. Now, Lindor has been one of the most consistent forces in baseball over his career. Outside of finishing as shortstop 10 in the COVID year and then finishing 18th in 2021 when he missed over a month with an oblique injury, outside of those, he has been a mainstay among the top 4 in fantasy scoring for shortstops, including back-to-back years at number 1 in 2017-2018 and back-to-back years at number 2 in 2022 and 2023. Now, last season was no different. Okay, Lindor finished second in NL MVP voting to the great Shohei, but he put up some of the best numbers of his career across the categories. His exit velocities, his launch angle over the past 2 seasons have been well over his career averages, but he took things to a new level last year with his barrel rate and his hard hit average. His barrel rate last season was 13.4. That was a full 3 points higher than in 2023. And that was a new career high for him. And his hard hit rate was 47.4%. And that's 3.5 points higher than 2023. And it's almost 3.5 points higher than his previous career best. Lindor is seeing the ball well at this point in his career, and he is swinging the bat hard, and good things are happening. So, with everything I just told you, why is he only 5th on your list, Thornton? Well, it's more a function of, just the talent at the position, really, than it is any kind of commentary on Lindor's ability. Lindor's draft ADP right now is right at the end of the first round. He's behind the 4 guys I also have ranked ahead of him. So he's behind in my rankings. He's behind in them in ADP. But would it really shock anybody if he outproduced 2 or 3 of the guys in front of him? No, not especially. And when you consider that regardless of position and regardless of where he's going at his position, Lindor was the 9th highest scoring player in fantasy last season. I am thrilled to take him anywhere in the bottom half of round number 1, whether he's the 5th shortstop off the board or not. He's got potential to be great value even as a first round pick. He could outscore some of the guys that are being taken in front of him. I wholeheartedly endorse Francisco Lindor at the end of the first round. So at number 4 then is last year's number 2 scoring shortstop. It's the Cincinnati Reds' Elly De La Cruz. The Reds phenom finally put it all together, and he really paid off on his 3rd round ADP last season. He finished not only as the number 2 scoring shortstop, but he was number 6 overall among batters. Now, dude, De La Cruz is the kind of player that I hate to love because, first off, he's a young divisional rival that my Brewers are going to have to contend with for a long time here. But secondly, and mostest of all, my guy just strikes out a literal metric ton. As in like 32.2% of the time for his career, as in 218 Ks last season. He was only 10 strikeouts behind Cy Young Award winner Tarek Skubal. Wow. Come on, dude. Now, to be fair, there were 400 at-bats and 69 walks and probably a sprinkling of other plate appearances where he didn't strike out. And in those 400 appearances where he didn't strike out, De La Cruz did some major damage. Dude punished some baseballs to the tune of a 12.7% barrel rate and a 45.7% hard hit rate. Okay. But he's not just all hard swings. De La Cruz has a really interesting profile, actually. For all his swinging and missing, the guy still walks quite a bit. He carries a 9.9% walk rate last season. Had the 3rd most walks among shortstops last season. And that went along with being 4th in runs, 5th in hits, 7th in home runs, 8th in RBIs. He also led not just all shortstops, but all of Major League Baseball in stolen bases as well. Dude, it must really suck to be 6'5" and just run like a majestic gazelle when you're not in a home run trot, right? Uh, he's fun to watch when he turns and burns on a base paths. Anyway, I mean, between Spencer Steer and Tyler Stevenson missing time, I mean, this lineup has seen a few big bruises lately, but Ellie's going to be hitting third. He still has Matt McLean helping set the table in front of him. And, again, not to beat the dead elephant in the room, but you all know how I feel about striker outers. Okay. Ellie De La Cruz could probably strike out 250 times this season and still lead the league in steals while hitting close to 30 home runs and scoring 100 runs. He's not going to be a big help in your batting average category. My gosh, is he going to help you just about everywhere else? Second in scoring last year, fourth in my rankings this year, because he plays at a loaded position. But you can confidently spend that first round pick he's going to cost you and be A-okay with it. He's going to score points. Just, Ellie, cut down that strikeout rate, dude. You shoot to the moon. Now, at number 3 is a player that many have argued is the best all-around player at the game at certain times in his career. And when you consider that Mookie Betts missed 2 months of 2024 with a fractured hand and he still finished 11th in scoring at shortstop, it's not the craziest argument to be had. Now, Mookie's travels around a baseball diamond have meant that, I mean, you've had to pay attention to what position he was eligible to fill for you throughout his career. But the world champion Dodgers seem to like him at shortstop, and so that's where we're ranking him. Okay, so check your league rules on his eligibility, but regardless of what roster slot you're going to pencil him into, he's one of the best fits in baseball when he's in the lineup. 2023, he ranked in the top 10 in just about every single major offensive statistical category, and he still managed to reach the top 15 in many of those same categories last season, despite those injury woes, okay? When Mookie's on the field, good things happen for your fantasy team. His walk rate is excellent. His K rate is excellenter. And he still hits the ball hard. If you check his StatCast numbers for last season, they were down pretty much across the board, except for a ridiculous 21.4 degree launch angle. I mean, that's steep enough to actually clear the San Gabriel Mountains. And my kid's a geoscience major. I've cross-checked this with him, so you can trust me on that. But I'm willing to give Mookie the benefit of the doubt on the StatCast decline right now, because for the previous 3 seasons before that, those numbers were all trending way up for him. So when I look at it, it looks to me much more like a case of the injury affecting things than it does like a 32-year-old in decline. Now, listen, I've already talked way too much about this. Mookie Betts is a former MVP, hitting between Shohei Ohtani and Freddie Freeman for the defending world champions, okay? Health has been an issue for him for several seasons, but when he's healthy, he is one of the beastiest of beasts. He's a 4.5 to 5 category player. 4.5 because his stolen base totals will kind of just tread water for you. You know, they're not going to drag you down, but they're not going to float you either. He's actually cheaper than Ellie De La Cruz right now, too, in drafts, and probably getting cheaper with this sickness here. Between the two of them, I like betting, and that pun is fully and wholeheartedly and gleefully intended there, but I like betting on the multi-year superstar in the world champion lineup over the new kid on the block who strikes out like a windmill when he's not disappearing baseballs into that Ohio countryside. But this weird illness that he's had is maybe some reason for the slightest pause. He missed the Japan series, and he hasn't been able to really do a whole lot since then. He was supposed to try and play this Sunday here, but he threw up before the game, so he called it off. And they've said that test results haven't really come up with anything yet, which is odd. You know, I mean, something's making this dude lose 20 pounds in just over a week. There's got to be something around there. But whatever it ends up being, if it's just some sort of like lingering stomach bug, I would expect it to be a drag on his power numbers, at least early in the season, until he kind of gets his legs back under him. He says he doesn't want to come back till he's 100%. They all, yeah, of course, we'd all love that. When's that going to be, dude? They are talking about him missing the start of the season, or the restart in the Dodgers case, as they played last week. But Yeah, he may have an IL stint, right, until he can shake this thing. So if you do take him, you're going to want to check your league's, IL rules, and you're probably going to need a contingency plan early for him, just like you will for the next man up on our list. Our number 2 ranked shortstop is still ranked number 2, despite some frustrating news that just came out about him as well. The Baltimore Orioles' Gunnar Henderson going to have to start the regular season on the IL with an intercostal strain. Intercostals are kind of up in here. This thing has actually had him sidelined for a good portion of camp since late February, for crying out loud. But he did resume baseball activities a week and a half ago or so. And the team is, quote, confident that it will be a short IL stint, which would be good news for Henderson's managers there. So he's been going in the top 8 picks of drafts this season, and he's been going in top 8 for good reason. He had a spectacular 2023. Saw him finish 5th in fantasy scoring among third basemen. And after that, Mr. Henderson followed it up by gaining shortstop eligibility and finishing 3rd at the shortstop position in scoring and 7th among hitters overall in fantasy in 2024. How'd he do it? Well, he literally set career bests in every single statistical offensive category except triples. I mean, he only had 7 triples in 2024 after hitting 9 in 2023. So, get on the game, get in the game, Gunnar. But those 7 triples were good for 7th in the league, though, overall. So either way, we're talking about a gifted young hitter in a very good lineup there in Baltimore. And Henderson walks a bunch. He strikes out at an acceptable, though not ideal rate, and he hits the ball hard. He had a hard hit rate of 53.9% last season. 53.9% of the balls that he hit qualified as hard hits. What the actual flying feathers are we talking about? Are you kidding me? I mean, he's freaking good. All right. Just needs to get healthy. I'm still bullish enough on him right now that I'm not going to drop him in my ranks for the injury. I wouldn't count on a discount on draft day. Maybe the same way that maybe people are might shy away from bets. I think he's still going to cost you a first round pick, but be aware you are going to have an immediate contingency plan in place for him. So you're either going to have to draft an extra shortstop, which means you're going to be drafting 4 middle infielders to fill 3 slots here, or you'll have to stash him on your IL and you're going to have to jump on the waiver wire if that's a possibility. So check your league rules and settings. But I think the pick is still worth it for a guy who led the position in home runs last year and was 2nd in runs and hits and 3rd in RBIs. Multi-category juice, big-time juice. I'm not going to drop him in my ranks. Gunnar Henderson. Pull the trigger. So we've come to number 1. And this should be about the most anticlimactic reveal of any of the lists that I've done this far. It's just going to come out and tell you it's Bobby Witt Jr. of the Kansas City Royals. That's just facts, chasers. I'm not going to sit here and claim outrageous things that someone else deserves the top spot. This isn't First Take or Brother from Another or The Herd or whatever. This is straight to the chase. And I'm going to tell you straight what I feel these guys' values are and how they can help your fantasy team. Okay? If I really have to explain to you how Bobby Witt Jr. can help your fantasy team, though, I mean, either you haven't played before or maybe this whole fantasy baseball gig just isn't for you, but we're going to go through the motions here anyway. Okay. Let's talk about Bobby Witt. Bobby Witt Jr. last season, top scoring shortstop, 3rd highest scoring hitter overall in points leagues behind just Ohtani and Aaron Judge. Led all shortstops, led the position in batting average, in runs, in hits, in doubles, in triples, 2nd in RBIs, 3rd in home runs, 5th in stolen bases. And now he's going to be hitting 2nd in a good Royals lineup. He's going to have Jonathan India in front of him, which is an upgrade over last season. And he's going to have show favorites Vinny Pasquantino and Sal Perez hitting behind him and protecting him there. So watch the leg thing for Vinny Pasquantino. He might be a little hobbled early this season, but eventually he's going to be hitting right there behind Bobby Witt. Now, Witt doesn't strike out too much, but he still hits the ball really hard. really well. His StatCast numbers, if you look at his StatCast numbers, I'm not going to run them all down for you. Just trust me, chasers. His StatCast numbers are just about ideal across the board. And he's only 24, and he's been able to stay pretty healthy in his 3 years in the league. Listen, I have to present a case and justify ranking Ezequiel Tovar at number 8. And I think I did that. But I understand that. There's just not much that has to be said about ranking Bobby Witt Jr. at number 1. In a world devoid of Shohei Ohtani, Witt would be the consensus top overall pick this season. He would be the consensus top overall pick instead of just the consensus, a lot of the time, top pick for guys who want to look smart. He's a 5-category star. 5-category star. And if your league has other categories, he's probably a star in those categories too. So don't overthink it. If Witt's there when you're on the clock, he's about the most solid foundational piece you can have in any format. So there you have it, chasers. That's our top 12 shortstops for fantasy drafts in 2025. Thanks again for giving us your time. Again, please like, subscribe, comment, share, do all the interacting with us online. And please go to podchaser.com. Search for Straight to the Chase and leave us a 5-star review. That's going to help me, help you, help me, help you. Okay. Follow Fantasy Baseball Advice Network on the Twitter X machine. You can follow me personally everywhere at STT Chase FFB. That's STT like Straight to the Chase. FFB like fantasy football. The other half of my gig here. We'll be back shortly. But until then, we are going to get up, and get out of here. Gone.
We are here. FantasySportsAdvice.com, offering the best fantasy sports social media platform. Why join endless Discord communities or the trolls of Reddit? Fantasy Sports Advice is a community designed to help you win with 24/7 support. Go to FantasySportsAdvice.com and become a pro member for unlimited access. Again, go to FantasySportsAdvice.com today.